I told you in the workshop, I said, please do me one favor. Do not break the coherence. And I had one email question about this phenomenon or what I was actually saying. They didn't quite get it, so it fits right here. So we all agreed in the workshop that we are now living in a time where there is tremendous polarization and tremendous upsurge of negative emotion, like people's hostilities on a scale unprecedented, right? I mean, I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook, but all you have to say is like one word and people are ready to pounce. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then as long as people are ready to pounce, then what are you? What happened? How does that make you feel? You're less willing to say anything. Right? So we now live in this overly police society where people are about to get ramrod by the thought police and shamed into submission. So we now live in a call-out culture that is essentially a bullying culture that has now forced people to shut the F up, submit. Right, so then you might find yourself tiptoeing around things, right? And if you tiptoe around things, in order to tiptoe around things, you have to squelch your feelings, and you have to squelch your opinion, and you have to squelch your views in order to keep the peace. And you can do that once, and you can do that twice. But eventually, what's going to happen? So the very premise that people are policing out of some moral justice initiative, what they are doing in the long haul is possibly creating an environment where there is an equal negative backlash. If you tell people you cannot say those things and you cannot believe those things and your beliefs are not allowed here, your beliefs are reprehensible, what will happen to those beliefs? They will go subterranean. And when they're out of sight and they're subterranean, they take on an additional charge, an additional power, just like a lava flow. And when a lava flow needs to burst, it's going to come out of the crust in an unsuspected way. And it's going to wreak havoc. And that is what we see societally right now. I'm not saying that there's no vital importance to some of the initiatives that are taking place in our culture. There is a need to bring out of the shadow the severe racism and misogyny that has existed in the shadows. People have felt very, very unsafe for a very long time. There's no problem with that. That's welcomed. That's an important time in history, a very important time in history where the darkness is no longer going to be allowed to continue. Some unacceptable behaviors are not going to be allowed to, whether it's government or officials or bribery or corruption or Wall Street or whatever it is, gerrymandering, you name it. Touching inappropriately at work. These things, they're not going to be stand for. But then when you go policing people about their opinions and their beliefs, and you put them on moral trial in front of their peers without due process. And you say things like impact is more important than intention. And you forget in one moment their career and their legacy and all the things that they do. And you hang your hat on one single word or one single action. You are going to drive into the shadows a tremendous amount of backlash rage. And so what you're going to have is you're going to have a massive pendulum swing between people that are acting righteous but making a huge suppression, and that suppression is going to come back. And that's what we have politically, don't we? You cannot say a word anymore. You cannot say a word. There is no room for debate. There's no room for sophistication. There is no room for nuance. There is no room for holding conflictual or contradictory views. There's no mutual respect for difference. And so that's what I mean by keep the coherence. What I mean by keep the coherence is you are allowed to have your contradictory belief here. We have to allow people to have their contradictory feeling here. That doesn't mean if you have an objection, you can't raise it. It does mean raise it, but raise it in a civilized way. We have to have microclimates where people can have civilized disagreement. Otherwise, whatever happens out there will happen in here, and we're not going to make it into the next module. I have now survived almost 3 different incidents in my life in the last 12 or 18 months, where it's so contentious, where one word has made a shitstorm, and where I've either been put on trial or somebody else has been put on trial. And that's just me. And you can see it at the universities, at the university level across North America, where one word is all that it takes. So when I said, don't break the coherence, and what am I really saying is, trauma is at play here. Trauma is at play here. Trauma is at play for the person that says the awful word. Trauma is at play at the nasty backlash. Trauma is at play at the separation and the driving it into the shadow. Trauma is at play at the nasty resurgence. The whole thing is traumatized. The whole thing is traumatized. There's no real healing there. So keep the coherence. Doesn't mean bite your lip. It means have an objection, but try to regulate yourself so that a contrary position can be heard and that there can be the ability to agree to disagree. That's fine. That's welcome. That's real learning. That's trauma-informed learning, in my estimation. The ability to sit across from somebody whom you disagree with in values and belief and still respect them enough to hear them and to share space with them. Maybe I'm sounding ideal. Certainly from what's available out there, this is a large stretch. So keeping the coherence doesn't mean bite your lip if you have an objection or you feel triggered by something. It means that trigger is telling you that you're uncomfortable for a reason, and you can talk about it. You can talk about it. In fact, what I'm saying is when you get triggered, and I said this in the workshop and I said it last week, if you get triggered, that is an invitation to discover. That is our invitation to discover. It is the soul telling us something here needs to be taken seriously, possibly for the first time.